it was misting out that like all day and into that evening. And I of course made sure to check with historical weather data, and that was the case. Like that was the actual weather on that day. And so he says because of that, he was able to see, like the sort of ambient moisture in the air, and whatever its hide was made out of, like this weird scaly skin stuff, was glinting in his headlights. And so he looks at this thing, and he says it's got its huge membranous wings sort of wrapped around its, like in front of itself, like if you've ever seen a bat hanging upside down. Well, like that, but it was standing up. And, and this all takes place in, 10 or 15 seconds, probably. And, so he's got his headlights on it, and it looks at him. He looks at it. What's that?
Yeah, I'm listening. I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. Honestly, I think I'm getting an echo. It's not you. Sorry. So he looks at it. It looks at him, and suddenly, in this blur of movement, it's just gone. And so, this is one of those things where 10 or 15 seconds, it changes your entire outlook on things, And in a flash, he's gone from being a relatively normal guy with normal friends, to, being somebody who's witnessed the impossible, to see, to be somebody who suddenly has to believe in monsters. And that was pretty evident when I went to go speak to him.
Was he pretty shook up when he was explaining it to you?
He was. That was something that was immediately obvious to me. Like he was nervous, and I get that. And he was. And I'm sorry if he happens to be listening. I would embarrass him, but he was sweating bullets, and I absolutely get it.
Interesting. You said it was about 7 to 8 feet tall.
Well, that's what he described it as initially, and so I wanted to do my best to sort of see if if maybe his mind was exaggerating in some way or something similar. So now, I'm sure we all know, like when you turn your headlights on, if something is near to your vehicle, the level of illumination and the diameter sort of the actual headlight shining on something will give you a pretty good idea of how far away it is.
Yeah. And also, I think when he turned the lights on, it probably put it into a short daze, too. That's why it was there for 10, 15 seconds and not gone instantly.
Honestly, definitely could have, And so now he had estimated, that it was probably, 5 or 6 feet away. And so just to make sure, we had tested a little bit with, distance and sort of, the level of illumination that the headlight would give at a certain distance on our van. And so, it honestly, 5 or 6 feet was pretty accurate, given what you described. And so I actually stood, and I'm 6'2", and I stood that far away from his van, and in his initial sighting report, he had said that this thing's head came up to easily the top of the windshield at that distance. Now, I'm 6'2", and my head was not to the top of that windshield, not even close. So, 7 or 8 feet, that seems pretty eerily accurate, Gary, honestly. Again, assuming everything he's saying is true, and again, I have literally no reason to think that it's not at this point. And so, that is, one of those sort of definitive examples of something that is absolutely just bafflingly weird that has been reported as a direct result of the, what I think, probably will turn out to be like initial flap of large heron sightings.
Or something. But, you're so right what you said earlier, with climate changes going on. A lot of not just birds, but creatures and everything, are their whole habits, their whole whatever they do is changing because they're trying to adapt to, the cycle of the weather and all this stuff. So, I mean, they're moving, like you said, different directions. So, I mean, maybe an area where somebody hasn't seen those type of creatures or birds, before, all of a sudden now they're in that area. And that's going to keep happening as our climate keeps changing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's honestly, that in and of itself is, or should be, at least as scary as Mothman to most people. Sort of in that vein, let me give you a great example of one of these.
Now we only got about 8 minutes left, but let's see what we can touch on here.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll make this pretty quick. So, the most recent sighting I received out of Chicago was May 9th of 2018, and the guy actually had video of the large flying creature, and so obviously I was intrigued by that, and I took his sighting report. And he initially described whatever it was as this large bat-like creature. And, I watched the video. I got some stills from it. I enlarged them. It was clearly a bird. And that's nothing against this guy. Nothing at all. But what happened was, is exactly what we're talking about. He never expected to see this large bird, because frankly, if we may say so, I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and we get a ton of sandhill cranes, and I see lots of sandhill cranes every year, all the time. You know what I never see them doing? Flying. And I feel like if I did see one flying, it would be weird, and I would be weirded out by it. But you don't usually see them flying, and I think that if something were to happen similar, to what's happening around Chicago, and all of a sudden there was a ton more sandhill cranes around where I live, the point where I was just seeing them flying around everywhere, there would be a lot of reports of some kind of monster. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that you would. The authorities would probably go crazy.
Yeah, and and so there is at least some definitive proof here that, part of this sighting flap is absolutely people seeing large migratory birds, sort of when they don't expect to.
Well, I think they're going to start seeing a lot more because the climate changes are really, I'm so frustrated with the government right now. What is going on, stripping the EPA, stripping all the laws that have taken 20, 30 years to, get on the books and just removing them overnight. I think we're going to start seeing so many different things that we have never seen before because, they're relaxing so many of the laws, changing the subject a little bit. But Japan is really contemplating dumping, from their reactors that melted down. They have millions and millions of gallons of really hot radioactive waste. They're contemplating dumping that into the Pacific Ocean. I mean, we're going to start seeing some real strange things. I think it's going to result if that happens down the road, not just with fish, but with the animals that, like the salmon, they go up the rivers, the bears down the road eating them. I think maybe we might start seeing some weird things happening here in the near future.
Yeah, honestly, continuing weird things. It wouldn't surprise me a bit. I don't want to sound too apocalyptic, but the honest fact is projections by a lot of people smarter and more knowledgeable than me are calling for what's likely going to be, mass refugee migrations. We're going to have, whole just enormous swaths of land turned into deserts. Look, I hope none of it happens. I'm sure we all do. I'm sure So we all sincerely hope from the bottom of our hearts that, suddenly governments wise up and pick people over profits. But I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a disgusting amount of corruption, I think, that has led to just a lot of people in charge who would rather they and their friends take, however many, or millions of dollars every year, and the direct result of that is going to be essentially that the rest of us are going to pay for it in literal blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, maybe me and you won't. I don't know your age, but, children and grandchildren will. I'll tell you this. Because, Antarctica, as you know, is breaking up, and, the amount of methane gas from, they blamed all this, pollution with methane gas with global warming on cows all through the world. Well, there's one lake that kind of opened up in Antarctica is belching out more methane gas, they figure, than any of and all the cows in the whole world.
Right.
And,
and that was always a ridiculous excuse. That was always a ridiculous diversion to sort of distract people from the actual, accumulators of, really dangerous crap being pumped into the atmosphere. I mean, the fact is, the problem with cattle was never whatever cattle are expelling from their bodies. It was always that, people were cutting down huge swaths of rainforest to graze the cattle, for instance. I mean, and, honestly, that thing from cattle, I mean, you and I both know, it is essentially meaningless. Like, the actual reality of it is, we have to move on to greener energy. We have to move away from factory farming. We have to let nature be natural for a while, and hopefully the planet will reset itself. But who knows?
Yeah, but maybe by then we'll be in an ice age. But my concern is, when you start talking about all these birds and they're talking about weird things like in South America and Mexico and all that stuff. Well, I guess, too, if you sit there and you take the rainforest and just take miles of it a day down, eventually, it has to affect the earth. I mean, that's what, we're not going to be able to breathe. And then, like all the forests are, they replant trees, but how long does it take a tree after they replant it before it can really do anything? I mean, we're doing so much damage so fast. And when you do all that, like with the forest, these animals, where are they going to go? Where I live at, honestly, 20 years ago, where I live, I bought it because it was really nice. It was a lot of cedar trees all around the area, hardly any houses. Well, 20 years later, I'm the only one in the whole area that has like 2 acres of cedar trees left. Everybody else has logged it out, built houses. And when I first moved here, I remember looking out, the window and seeing a bear and its cubs walking down the street. I used to have a lot of deer. Now it's like maybe every couple months a deer will run across the property. I don't see deer. I haven't seen a bear in almost 20 years. Where do they go? I mean, they have to migrate somewhere. But then it's going to be a point where there's no place where they're going to go. So like these giant birds, the same thing. You got the climate changes. They're sitting out building more houses, more industrial areas and commercial areas. So they have no place to go. And then you're going to start seeing them move into another area. And, and people are not accustomed to seeing these type of things. They're going to look at, well, there's a Mothman or there's this or that. I mean,
There was a big hullabaloo in Milwaukee just this last year, and that's only an hour and 15 minutes east of where Emily and I live. We have some family over there. Anyway, so people were seeing this lion in Milwaukee, and people were getting sort of off in arms about it. Like, what is this lion we're seeing? What is this out of place cryptid lion doing here? And well, it turns out that we don't have as far as the DNR goes, but, often they're sort of behind the curve on these things because